what led you to start Wine Dads?
Well, like a lot of people, I was not a big wine drinker because I didn't know what I liked and what I didn't like about wine until one year I went winery touring in Sonoma for a couple of days. And that just opened my eyes to wine and how much I loved it and how to figure out how to navigate the wine world, which is still a tricky matter for the business to figure out. And I came home and started shopping for wine and exploring stores and what their offerings were like and the similarities and the differences and how to figure this whole thing out. And within probably 6 weeks, I was like, this is next up. I'm going to transition from my old job here into wine. I went and got wine certifications. So not a sommelier, but very similar. And was really intent on getting into having my own store someday. But first up was, let me get into the business, learn how it operates, manage other people's stores, that sort of thing. But really, that was from that point on. I'm like, I'm going to have my own wine shop someday.
And what year was this?
This was all the way back the winery touring was in 2008. And then I got certified and was job hunting at a rough time for the economy, but landed my first job managing a small boutique wine shop in 2009.
And so then you spent 2009 through to 2018, really just like learning the industry, managing other people's stores before you opened the first location.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Well, before I have a ton of questions, before we get there, I want to give you a quick introduction. Jeff Carroll here is the founder and owner of Wine Dads. And Wine Dads is a bottle shop offering curated selections of wine and spirits. He started it in 2018. They've since expanded to 3 locations. And he is, according to his LinkedIn, the chief wine taster. So really excited to have you on, Jeff. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Will. I'm excited to be here.
What were the key things that you learned along the way?
Well, I had a background in retail. I was actually working for Trader Joe's at the store level management for 7 years before that. So I had one aspect down already about retail, but what I didn't know was how to order, how the ecosystem worked in wholesalers and distributors, how to keep mind of the product, how to sell wine to customers, help them find what they were looking for. So a lot of the nitty gritty things in terms of how the particular business works, especially about ordering and balancing out your selections of offerings.
Sure. Because it's different than like a corner liquor store insofar as like everyone kind of has the same SKU selection or quite similar. There's more of an art to the procurement side. How do you try to figure out like what's going to sell, what's going to drive margin?
Yeah. So and we're a little bit of a hybrid, I would say. So it's not a boutique store. And that's really, listen, I was a wine geek. That's what got me into, wanting to own my own store. And I absolutely would have had a very small boutique wine shop with 300 selections, no name brands. And if you weren't an adventurous, you weren't going to be a customer, but small volume, but bigger margins, that sort of thing. But the first Wine Dads happened because I watched a building getting built on the hot corner in my town in Hoboken, New Jersey. And I thought, man, that'd be a good spot for a store right there. And a couple of weeks later, I heard Trader Joe's was actually going to take a space there. And they're maxed out. So New Jersey laws limit how many liquor licenses you can have for retail.
Okay.
And so they couldn't have wine in their store here. So I thought, okay, it's not a good location. It's a great location. So let me hop on this. So the first thing I realized was, okay, they're going to attract a lot of customers to my store that are going to come from outside of the immediate neighborhood, which is really what most stores cater to. And if I have a boutique store there, some big percentage of the customers that they're going to attract from me are going to take one step inside the store and leave. No, not for me. This is too fancy. This is too expensive. Probably I don't know enough to shop in this store. And so I made the decision to make sure that it looked and felt like a typical liquor store.
Okay.
So when you walk in, there's very sort of standard looking shelving, just black shelves standing upright, no fancy boxes on the wall. And we carry some of the popular selections, not a lot, not as much as some big stores. And so my elevator pitch for that is we're a boutique wine shop cleverly disguised as a liquor store. So I have a little bit of both. And so then when it comes down to then how do we pick the better wines and the smaller producers and selections, it's really just based on our passion and love for the product. And so
Sure.
like a boutique store, we taste a lot of wine. Hence
Yeah.
my title is Chief Wine Taster. It's a tough job.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you taste through and you evaluate the wine with the knowledge that you've studied for and accumulated over the years, and you say, yeah, this is a great bottle. It fits in the categories in the set. Like, I don't have a wine of this style, this type, in this price range, or I could have 3 of them if it's Sancerre.
Sure.
And so that's how you curate the store. And then the next step is the matter of having knowledgeable staff to work in the store. So it's not just on the shelf waiting for you to decide that I'll be bold enough to pick up a bottle that I don't know really what's inside of it because it's not a name brand, or we have some staff here that can have a conversation with you and help you find something interesting, something that you'll love.
Gotcha. And that almost comes to the name a bit. Like Wine Dads feels very approachable. It doesn't feel like you're stepping into some overly pretentious or complicated boutique wine store.
Yes. And it was a little by design, but also a little bit of an accident. When I was managing someone else's store and in southern New Jersey, and had moved back into my hometown of Philadelphia, and there was this really cool pizza shop nearby that was owned by a guy I had worked with at Trader Joe's. And I used to show up there every Friday night with 2 or 3 bottles of crazy wine and a box of glasses under my arm. And I would share wine with the staff. And so they nicknamed me Wine Dad.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's how the name happened. When I was looking for, I can't call it Trader Jeff. I'll get sued by Trader Joe's. But how do I convey that we're something a little bit more fun and approachable? And so the nickname sort of surfaced for me. And actually what they said about the nickname was, how Dad just knows, and you just know a lot about wine. And so that became our tagline for the store, is Dad just knows.
That's amazing. I love that. And so on the initial store, you have this like incredible opportunity with Trader Joe's going to attract a lot of people. You're able to kind of blend, I can explore my passion on the wine selection, but I have enough volume and I'm appealing to enough people that from like a business perspective, I can kind of capitalize on being next to Trader Joe's. Building out a store location is like expensive. You're oftentimes like personally guaranteeing stuff. It's super stressful, at least the folks I know have done it. What was that experience like?
The most difficult thing I've ever attempted in my life, for sure. Plus, in New Jersey, like a lot of states, we have a lot of regulation to be in the alcohol business. The first thing is you have to secure the right license. There's only so many for every town, and they're not cheap. So opening up a store like mine is a multitude more expensive than opening up pretty much any other sort of retail operation. It was about $1 million.
Wow. Are you buying an existing license or applying for a new one?
No, buying an existing. They could only, in New Jersey, they could only issue a new license for what we do for if there's an additional 7,000 people in population. And then the town has to apply to the state and prove on the census that they can issue a new license. So you have to find one that's for sale. It's got to be in the town. It's only good for that town, and be able to move it to the location you want, all that sort of stuff. And I got pretty lucky with that. But yeah, it was a very expensive proposition. The build out, the refrigeration for the beer, the shelving, the liquor license. It was certainly an education. I had never done it before, and it's maybe getting a little easier, but not quite. It's always still difficult.
How'd you find the license?
So there was a store that was empty in Hoboken, on the other side of town, with a handwritten for sale sign on it. And I noticed it there when I moved to Hoboken 4 years earlier. In fact, I think I had even called once to inquire and see what it might be going for. And it turned out that the guy who owned it for 30 some years had retired and closed the store, and he tried to sell it to other people. But because he owned the building and had occupied it, he did a lot of things over the years that didn't quite meet code. But now that he was going to be a landlord, he had to meet code. And nobody could figure out how to operate a store in this space that they would have to do a lot of work to change, or they'd had no storage space. And there were a lot of, apparently 2 deals happened and fell through. And I was the first person then to approach him and say, look, I'm not interested in leasing your space, but I'd happily just buy the license and take it and use it somewhere else. And so at that point, they were thrilled to be able to take that deal.
And are you running the build out and licensing process in parallel? Because I imagine you kind of need both, but you also have to do both in parallel. So it's a bit rocky.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, and actually the third store is not quite open yet. It's we're just about to start construction there. We're waiting for building permits now, and everything else is done. And yes, you can't apply for putting a liquor license into this new space because again, the third store is all three stores were basically brand new buildings. So we're first tenant each time. And so you can't apply to the town to move the license into that space until you have a lease. You can't actually use the license, so you can't even order product until you have a certificate of occupancy. So once your build out is done, landlords surely want you to sign a lease and start paying them immediately, but there's all that other work that has to happen, and so you've got to move everything forward together at the same moment.
Yeah. And how did you handle that the first time? Like, did you consult friends or advisors? Because obviously, like managing a store is one thing, but doing like the general contractor build out project management is a lot.
Yes. No, I didn't. I couldn't really find anyone to help me through that process. I was hoping for something that I could find to help me navigate, but there isn't. And so you just sort of feel your way through. I know I had gotten some. I guess I had asked around. I don't even really recall right now about how I found an architect. I think I probably tried a couple in town and picked one, and he brought me to a general contractor. I found an attorney with some experience in liquor licenses to help me navigate that side of it and getting the approvals. And so, yeah, it was a lot of discovering things that I had to take care of that I didn't know about. As they came at me.
Trial by fire.
Yes.
And how did you finance that first one?
I wish I knew. Somehow we, my wife and I, with a little bit of savings and a little bit of help from some family, we managed to pull it off ourselves.
Yeah. That's awesome. On the expansion side, how long did you wait after that first location was open before you were like, okay, I have something figured out here. Let's go try it again.
Well, we opened in 2018, and somewhere in 2019, maybe middle of the year, somebody approached me, a sales rep for a wine distribution company approached me with, hey, there's somebody in the next town over in Jersey City who's looking to retire. They don't want to sell their store or lease it out. They live in the building, and they just want to sell the license. Are you interested? And at that time, I knew that Trader Joe's was looking for a Jersey City location. And I thought, this is a great opportunity. If we grab this license and sit on it, so technically called a pocket license, not being used anywhere, then as soon as we hear where Trader Joe's finds a location, we can pounce on being next to them again. And so we did. We pounced on that license and we bought it and we sat on it for 4 years. Ironically, when the opportunity came for store number 2, I was approached by a commercial real estate broker, asking if I was interested in this space. I decided not to use the license that we already owned. My wife thought I was nuts. The landlord is a pretty big developer here in New Jersey, and they were sitting on liquor licenses. They would sometimes buy and accumulate them and hold them to help market their properties. And so I said, well, look, we're still waiting on Trader Joe's. They're still looking, and some project had fallen through that they were going to go to. And so I said, this way, we can finance that license through the landlord and open up store number 2 and still be ready for store number 3 when Trader Joe's happens.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is that common on the developer side?
A little bit. Usually more. There's a few, but there's really 2 main kinds of liquor licenses in New Jersey, one for on-premise and one for off. And typically they will buy the off-premise licenses more than the on, unless they decide that somewhere they're either going to have or build a building that they might want a liquor store in. But yeah, so it is kind of, I mean, more so I think these days than it used to be that the developers grab up these licenses and yeah.
Interesting. That's a cool expansion strategy. Reminds me of the owner of the Rams uh, built his fortune by just buying the strip malls next to Walmart's. And
Wow.
so it's
Yeah.
like, if you can just find kind of some type of really good anchor tenant, either be another retailer nearby or own the real estate, it's a really good strategy. On the hiring side, unlike some retail where maybe you don't need to be as much of an expert on the product, this can get very technical very quickly. Who are you looking for in hires?
So, and you're absolutely correct there. And looking for people who have certified knowledge first is always easiest. And so there is the sommelier certification, which people are familiar with. And then there's other certifications that don't teach you as much about the on-premise world. Like, so we learn a lot of the same things in terms of great growing in regions and winemaking and all that sort of thing, but without the service aspect. And so if somebody has either of those certifications, I know that they have the knowledge that's required to help people decipher the wine bottles
Sure.
and the spirits. And then also, of course, some experience in the trade is even more helpful because um, there's also the other side of learning how to interpret customers' questions and shyness about asking questions about wine or enthusiasm, and how to navigate the dichotomy in the wine world between, oh, I'm only looking for very expensive, well scored wines, or I'm adventurous and love to try out something that may be inexpensive but you think is fantastic. Um, and so, yeah, learning all those things. So I certainly look for people who have experience.
Okay. On your personal involvement in the stores, it sounds like you have a store manager model where they're kind of responsible for some amount of business tasks. What's the line between things that, like, hey, I want to control this as Jeff, the owner of Wine Dads, versus, hey, I'm going to delegate this box of responsibilities to the manager?
Well, when I started, I was the manager of the store. Yeah, and of course, as a startup store, I lived it 110 hours a week, down to 70 at some point, which felt like a lot of relief. And I did everything. I think I hired my first manager about a year after the pandemic, um, and knowing that store number two was on its way. We were just
Okay.
starting to talk about getting the lease there, and I knew that I would have to start to expand that staffing that way. And I will say that I did a slow transition with my first manager. She was somebody who had sommelier training and had worked in the on-premise side in a restaurant for years, and also as a sales rep for a good wine distributor. But she hadn't done retail management, and that was the only part that I wasn't sure about. So we sort of shared responsibility at first until I got to the point that I realized I think I'm in her way, and I need to just get out of her way now, and let her have run of the store. So she basically has responsibility for the daily operation, for ordering most of the goods, for overseeing the staff, scheduling, keeping the eyes out with me for hiring and staffing and training. But I maintain the financial side. I pay the bills. I do the payroll, and I'm still ordering from some of the bigger distributors that sell some of the name brands and spirits, especially because that's in this business. That's where a lot of the rubber meets the road in terms of managing cash flow and margins, because those goods have buy levels and discount levels and that sort of thing. And so I haven't handed off that responsibility to anyone else yet, but I
Sure.
am. I might be working towards that now after store three opens.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how does that look like? Like, do you get any financing from the distributors, or are you
Mm.
managing all the working capital on your own?
Yeah, no financing. In fact, being in a regulated industry, the laws came about after prohibition ended, so a long time ago. But the main thing was, if you were in the alcohol business when they repealed prohibition, it meant that you were a criminal.
Right.
So they wanted to make sure that they got those people out of the business, and so they implemented a lot of rules that still stand today. Um, One of the first ones is not only is there no financing for anything in this industry, it's very difficult. All invoices for alcohol goods have to be paid in 30 days. And if you don't pay on time, then the vendors are required to put you on a statewide COD list, and everything else you buy then has to be paid COD. And not that 30 days is that great of a time difference anyway,
Yeah.
but it's still helpful to be able to just order things in and not worry about having somebody there with a check. So that's where the cash flow work comes in at trying to make sure that you're maintaining the right sort of buying levels on everything.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
You have to really turn over inventory if everything's net 30.
Yes, and we do. Thankfully, we have for a retail operation, we're basically 10 or 12 turnovers a year.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you have that set of responsibilities, which you have to get right. Sounds like kind of like high risk and more difficult than other industries. Are there like certain metrics or KPIs you're looking at the store level to kind of just spot check, okay, things are running well?
Yes, and for me, the first is, are we selling enough of the what I like to call the wine dads sort of goods? Because we do carry Tito's and Josh Cab, but I mean a handful of those sorts of items. Probably more on spirits than in wine. But I always look to make sure that we're still buying and selling a lot of small producers from the better wine distribution companies. I mean, being in the New York market, we get the best selection of wines in the world here. And so that's the first thing I look at, and then just sort of balancing out. I mean, the good thing too is on those sorts of wines, there aren't buy levels to deal with. I set what our markup, and in retail, we tend to think markup more than margin. But so I set what the markup is. We wanted to make sure that we were price competitive as much as we could be, but also that we are up here where we're priced in the same as the New York market, because the cost of real estate here and the cost of rent is much higher. So elsewhere in the state, you'll have a lower markup, but we sort of balance out with that sort of thing. Yeah.
How do you imagine, like, over time you can pattern match and your own tastes are probably, you have more confidence. Hopefully you become more and more right. Early on, aside from just ordering all of the most common, boring, maybe not mission aligned with what Wine Dads is supposed to do, that first few orders are probably a little bit stressful because you don't know exactly what's going to happen.
Well, except that I had a lot of years of experience and was doing that already for other stores.
Sure.
I mean, in fact, my same model became what I did for other stores almost by accident. I took over managing a store on the Upper East Side in New York for a family group that they were in the grocery business, and they bought a grocery store that came with a wine shop, and they had never been in the wine business. In fact, the patriarch of the family didn't even drink wine. So they're like, look, we got some advice. We were told, keep your top 100 sellers, but don't worry about it after that. And so that's what they said to me. Here's a list from the people we bought out. And, here's their top 100 sellers. Keep those. After that, we don't care what you do because we don't even know. So I got to do the same thing. I kept some of the popular brands and added in what I liked. And the best part for me is, ever since we opened, is that we'll get a sommelier who's at some great restaurant in New York, sometimes Michelin-starred restaurants, who live over here in New Jersey, and they come into my store and they go, "Thank you, this is great. You've got a great selection." And I've had people in the trade say, "You have restaurant list wines in your store." And I never thought about it that way. Oh, there you go. Yes, I just know the great distributors, the great producers, what they're carrying, what's interesting, the story behind the wines, that they're authentic, they're small producers. It's not a wine factory somewhere. And so I took it. It was that leap of faith, Will, but it was. I had already had that experience.
Yeah,
so
you've kind of built that up, not only at Trader Joe's, but also 10 years managing other folk stores.
Yeah.
Got it. What advice would you give someone considering getting into this industry?
Go work in a store somewhere. Number one. I've heard stories about people who built that way and took the slow route, and it is a slow route. And listen, there's nothing wrong, especially in these days when we've got plenty of search and independent sponsor and lots of in ETA in general. However, you have to get an understanding of that one aspect of buying correctly, of balancing out your selections and your cash flow, because as in all things, cash flow is king. And in retail like this, where you've got a lot of turnover in your inventory, you've got to balance that.
Yep, that makes sense. Reminds me of some other industries. The estimation part is kind of similar, where if you're not really good at estimating the job, you're either going to win a bunch of unprofitable business or lose a bunch of business. And so it's very hard for folks from the outside in who haven't spent a handful of years learning that it's not something you can pick up in 30 days. What are you most excited for in the coming year?
Well, I've been doing my own research and learning a lot about all forms of ETA and roll-ups and that sort of thing. I've come to the determination that there's probably not enough profitability in my business and in my model to take in some growth capital, but that maybe I look at sort of an individual growth strategy. So I'll find another location, something that, and maybe this time something existing that I can convert, that it's in the right location, has the right demographics, and that I can convert from basically a liquor store into a wine dad's and go there. And so I'm developing that idea.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for coming on. This is really insightful and enjoyed chatting with you.
Thank you. I wish I could have maybe mailed you a bottle of wine. We could have had sort of glasses together.
Next time I'm in New York, I'll let you know.
Please do.